I'm going to try this again. I made the best screencast ever known to humankind, and I uploaded it and everything, and then I went to play it, to clip it into Moodle, and it had no sound. And anyway, here we are. I had a question about Chapter 8, Number 4, which is taken from the core econ text, exercise 8.5. So, oh, I'm sorry. My computer started making noise all of a sudden. Anyway, here we are. We have this demand increase, and then we can use our model to talk about farmers' reaction to that event, and that'll answer numbers 2 and 3, and then we're speculating for 4 and 5. So here we go. First, let's look at the figures that are being referenced. One is this production. We see that production of quinoa went up from 2001 to 2011. We also see quinoa is grown in Peru and Bolivia, maybe a teeny bit in Ecuador, but it's a crop that's special to the Andes. And then finally we see, well, two more. We see that producer prices are pretty constant until 2007, 2008. And then we see world demand really exploding in 2008 and then 2009 and then 2011 as well. Well, let's use our model here, and let me switch to my pen, and I should have probably loaded up my initial axes. Let's analyze the quinoa market. Price is dollars per kilo, I'm assuming, and we'll say million kilos per year on the units. And there's some initial demand curve, initial supply curve, and early on, back in 1999, before all this happened, when nobody could have told you what quinoa was outside of these little villages in the Andes Mountains, let's analyze the problem of a single quinoa farmer. Price is in the same units, dollars per kilo. That's a dollar sign, and kg is how we abbreviate kilo. And then quantity will be just we'll use small q, that'll just be kilos per year. And then there's this flat line demand curve, and then there's initial, we're going to assume we're in long run equilibrium, marginal cost, price all intersect at that point. This is the marginal cost curve. And remember that the isoprofit curve that corresponds to zero profits is called the average total cost. Firm level output starts at Q naught. Well, let's think about what happened. In the short run, there was this unexpected increase in demand, and so demand went up because of this fad for quinoa as the super grain. Price goes up, quantity produced goes up. That's supposed to be a big Q1. And then think about what happens to the individual producer. Remember, they maximize profits where price and marginal cost are equal. Output goes up to Q1. And it turns out, remember in class we talked about P1. This was P naught. And this is ATC1. Another way to express profits is price, that's a beginning parentheses, price minus average total cost, all times quantity. And anyway, we can show there's positive economic profits in the short run, that blue rectangle. I'm not doing the isoprofit line. Well, I could. It's just right there. That's the new isoprofit line higher. All right, so that's the short run. Well, in the long run, everybody's looking around. Actually, I did some research, and even taxi drivers were growing little plots of quinoa. Everybody saw that the quinoa farmers were doing well, and they wanted to get a piece of that action. So when they saw how well the farmers growing quinoa were there was a lot of new production. We call that entry. And in the long run, here, what does it take to grow a crop of quinoa, plant it and grow it in a year or maybe even less? So in the long run, farmers are back to making zero economic profits. And in the long run, there's this, we call this long run supply curve. If it's a constant cost industry where entry doesn't cause price to rise, then price stays constant over the long run at minimum average cost. Now, so that gets us through. Why did price stay constant until 2007? Well, farmers anticipated this demand and increase and were entering at a rapid rate, and the new production kept prices from rising. Now, how could you account for the rapid price increase in 2008, 2009? There's a lot of ways to answer this. One thing, it could be that all the land that was suitable for growing quinoa was put into quinoa, and there wasn't any more, and they started farming even ever more marginal lands for quinoa. Maybe there could be. It could be that the demand increase was unexpected, and farmers trying to meet this crazy increase in demand. Remember that world demand, it doubled over those years. Maybe that was just unforeseen, and so we're back to demand is increasing, but by the magnitude of the demand increase took them by surprise. Could have been a drought. It could have been, there's a lot of ways to explain that. I actually did some research, and events in this market were really interesting after 2011. But anyway, so if you thought it was a drought, then in the long run, prices would fall back down to their original level, assuming that it's not a new climate warming type of drought that's not going to go back to its original level. If you thought it was an unforeseen increase in demand, well, then there'd be further entry, and the price would go down. If you thought they were bringing ever more marginal land into production, well, then there would be an increase in the cost. That would and those the price wouldn't come down to its original level. Now, as it happened, in 2013, 2014, the bottom dropped out of the quinoa market. There was still a bunch of production, but the price dropped well below even its original levels. And the reason why is that agricultural businesses, modern agricultural businesses, noticed the quinoa phenomenon and saw that people were making money in quinoa, and they started putting money into research and development for how to grow quinoa in other places than in the Andes, these marginal lands in the high elevations of Peru and Bolivia. And lo and behold, they succeeded. So the quinoa prices fell below the level at which traditional quinoa farmers could even make a living. So big agricultural businesses now make quinoa, and the price is much lower than it was before. This is great news for consumers, but not so great news for the quinoa farmers and the traditional farmers in Peru and Bolivia. Now, there's a lot of agricultural businesses in Peru and Bolivia that are doing quite well, mostly Peru apparently. But like I say, I did that research. But sort of an interesting event and an interesting illustration of how we use this model to study events. Hopefully the sound worked that time.